Talking with Laura Truesdale. She's actually a founding member of Rich in Purpose, also a licensed therapist with concentration in overachieving and people pleasing. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We're happy you're here. Tell us, Laura, a little bit about. I know you went through your childhood and you became a people pleaser and an overachiever. And so tell us a little bit about that and how you ended up coming to the being a therapist and helping people.
So, I am the youngest of four children in my family. And as I grew up, I have a very accomplished father. And I grew up with this belief that in order to be accepted and loved and really kind of embraced, I needed to be a pleasing child. I needed to be the good child, be the one that did things right. I always strived to be an excellent student and achieve more and do more. And I really grew up with this belief that in order for me to be happy, I had to make other people happy. And I believed that if I could make everybody else happy, then it would be my turn. And really, I've known since I was 12 years old that I wanted to be a therapist. I wanted to help other people. And so throughout high school, I developed my passion for learning psychology. I went to college, majored in psychology. And then the day I graduated, someone looked at me and said, "So now what can you do?" Implying that I really didn't have any real skill set. So I went back and I got a second degree. And then I went on to get my master's degree. And I worked and so hard to be the best student, to really do well. I had a 4.0 in grad school. And you know what? It doesn't really matter what your grades are. As long as you pass the program, they don't care what your grades are. But then I went on and I worked for an agency for 20 years as a therapist. And about 7 years ago, I stepped out into private practice. So I've always been about achieving, doing more, trying to be the best at whatever I was doing. And it wasn't until maybe 5 years ago that I really began to understand why I'm such a people pleaser and why I was such an overachiever. And it's through my own self-development and healing that I learned that was a means for me to feel loved, to not be rejected. And that came from childhood wounds that I'd experienced, not intentional wounds. Obviously, my parents parented the best way that they could. They loved me the best way that they could. But I got internal messages that me being just who I am wasn't good enough. I needed to excel. I needed to do more. And so throughout my entire career, I've seen that pattern along with most of the people that I worked with. And it's these underlying beliefs that you're not good enough, you're not worthy, that love is performative. And so that's really been one of my passions is to help people understand the hidden powers that keep patterns that keep them from really achieving what they want in their life.
Right. Well, Laura, it's really self-love that allows us to get to the maximum achievement in our life. Tell me a
Absolutely.
little bit about how you can help people really get self-love and then how you accumulated or gained that self-love of yourself.
Well, first of all, I think one of the most important things that I learned is that the need for self-love, right? Growing up, I wanted love from my parents, from my siblings, from friends, from as I started as a child or young adult started dating, I wanted love from other people. And when you don't get that love, you feel rejected. So you keep searching, keep grabbing, keep looking, keep chasing. And it wasn't really until I would say in my late 40s that I realized that love has to come from within. And that old statement that you can't love someone until you love yourself, I found that to be true. And so, in my own personal healing journey, I learned how I was seeking love through others. And really, I had to learn that I'm lovable just for being me. I don't have to earn it. I don't have to prove it. I'm also enough. I was born enough. I was born worthy. I was born lovable. And once I realized that about myself, I really wanted other people to recognize that that's a key to really achieving what they want is learning how to love themselves opens you up to healthy relationships, to healthy choices and decisions. It really is the core to achievement and to finding the life that you want.
Yeah, I know that you do the heart healing and it helps you love yourself. Tell our audience, Laura, a little bit about how that particular program can help you love yourself. Because I think that is really the toughest thing that people like us who have had childhood trauma is to love themselves and because we didn't really feel that we were loved when we were children. So tell us how your heart healing can help us love ourselves.
Well, heart healing is a revolutionary transformative treatment modality that was developed by Natasha Bray. And when I first encountered heart healing with a mentor of mine, she opened up my eyes that there were still things I needed to work on. As a therapist, I thought I had dealt with all of my issues and that I had processed everything. Of course, I'm a therapist. I dealt with it. And she gently told me that I had a lot of stuff that I still need to work on. And when I did my first heart healing session, I came to understand why I didn't feel good enough. And through the process of heart healing, we really identify that inner child that was first wounded. And we identify the relationship that triggered that wound. Maybe it's about not feeling lovable, not feeling good enough. And through the process of heart healing, we really work to allow that inner child to voice the pain, the hurt, the damage that that wound caused them. And we break the energetic cords that we have with the wounder. And after that, what we do is we nurture that inner child to help them feel and know that they're loved as they are and try to really nurture that inner child to a point of that starts to become our subconscious narrative, not the old narrative that we believed we're not good enough or not worthy or lovable. And the beauty about heart healing is that we create a beautiful imprint or recording that we have our clients listen to for a minimum of 21 to 25 days after the session that starts to rewire our subconscious mind. And instead of saying that, have that nagging narrative that you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're unlovable, the words that we share with the client remind them of their worth and help them imprint new messages about their worth and their enoughness and that they're lovable and they're not being rejected, that we truly can find love and nurturing within ourselves. And we can nurture that inner child that felt those wounds in their past and create a new subconscious understanding and a new way to talk to ourselves. And I found personally that it uncovered so many wounds for me, and all the transformative imprints I listened to allowed me to start recognizing how beautiful I was, how good enough I was, how lovable, how special I am. And so it allows us to rewire that unconscious, subconscious belief system that we've been listening to all of our lives and develop a new way of seeing ourselves and talking to ourselves in a way that builds us up and helps us find that self-love and that inner worth.
When you say you go into the inner child, because for the first 8 years of my life, I think I remember 4 days.
Right.
But I don't remember my childhood. So, and I'm sure a lot of our audience doesn't remember their childhood as well. So tell us, Laura, how do you get us to remember those moments that really is in our subconscious mind, but we just don't remember them? So how do you help us with that?
Well, the primary modality in doing that is through hypnosis. And the reason why people don't remember a lot of their childhood in some instances is because there's trauma there. And so our brain has a protective function of trying to suppress those issues, those memories, because at the time it was too much for our system to handle. And so hypnosis allows us to go in and kind of quiet that conscious critical voice and allows us to really tap in to that unconscious part of our brain. And when we do that, we're able to use the power of the heart in the way that we do that. We go into the heart while we're in hypnosis, and it allows us to really allow that inner child to come forward. And we start to really reconnect with that inner child that has been really kind of quieted for all these years, but yet still reacts to triggers in our world. And so we talk to that inner child, identify the age. Sometimes it's incredibly young. It could be even 2 or 3 years old. But we connect with that inner child. And then the adult version of us, the one that is in our present moment, is able to talk for that inner child and relay the wounds and relay the hurt and really get all those emotions and those beliefs out so that we can begin to cut those cords, those energetic cords that still connect us to that relational wound. And after we do that, we allow the adult version of us essentially to talk to that inner child and build them up. Tell them how lovable they are, how protected, how safe they are, and how enough they are. And that allows us to then offer the opportunity for us to integrate that inner child back into our heart and allows us to be one with our inner child and allows us to then create this new mindset, this new subconscious way of knowing ourselves. And so that inner child isn't always triggered because we've developed a new sense of self and we've developed a new unconscious way of talking to ourselves. So the inner child will come out at whatever age they need to, and it gets revealed to us. And a lot of people get very anxious about hypnosis, and hypnosis is just a really relaxed state. It's not like what you see on TV when people are on stage making other people quack like a duck or bark or whatever. Hypnosis is, in a therapeutic sense, is just a really relaxed state where you're not focused on all the conscious things that are going on, but really allow yourself to go inward and connect to that part of yourself.
I mean, it sounds so great, but like me, my mind never shuts down. And when I've tried to get healed, I tried to get hypnotized twice, and it didn't work for me. So tell our audience a little bit how your technique will help us actually go into the hypnosis, even though maybe our minds are going like 100 miles a minute.
Well, Jamie, it's kind of funny because when my mentor did heart healing, before she started, she asked, "Can I put you into hypnosis?" And I thought, "You can try," because my mind is the same exact way. It's constantly going. And so she was able to do it. I was blown away. What we don't realize is that we still have the ability to be conscious anytime we want to, but it is about feeling safe to be hypnotized. And one of the things that we do in heart healing is we have what we call a feeling safe imprint, where we give to our clients the week prior to our actual session and allow them to start to be in the process of learning how to get in that really relaxed space. And then we give them suggestions, which is what hypnosis allows us to do to help create safety in that process. Because I'm like you, Jamie, I'd be like, yeah, no, you're not gonna hypnotize me. But what I found personally is that I am able to get there, but I had to feel safe to do that. And how do we feel safe? One is to develop rapport with your therapist or your practitioner. The other is to start to help impress upon your mind that you can do this, because we put up these walls saying, "I can't do that. I can't be hypnotized." And most of us are incredibly suggestible. And if we would just allow ourselves to be open, we'll find that we actually can go into hypnosis. And the one thing that I learned in my process is the brain gives us what we need. So if we'll just be open, the brain will give us what we need. And during heart healing, I would like, what was that? Where did that come from? And then I learned like the brain gives us what we need. Our unconscious, subconscious mind will bring it to us as long as we can stay in an open, receptive, relaxed state, it comes to us. And I have gone through so many different levels as a master heart healing practitioner. I've done the quantum heart healing, which also goes into ancestral and past life heart healing, which I thought like, okay, it's a little bit more woo-woo than I'm used to. But what I found is when we're open to that, we can learn so much about the patterns that have been passed down through the generations just by being open. You really can go really deep into the subconscious mind and into different spiritual levels to really uncover what we've been carrying it throughout our lives and throughout generations. It's powerful stuff.
I mean, the one thing I've been really kind of trying to study is the intergenerational trauma
Right,
because, you know, we say we're not going to be like our parents, but we end up like our parents, right? And
right,
then they say they're not going to be like their parents and they end up like their parents.
right.
So you get into this almost like a lifestyle that your whole your grandparents and their parents were just
Mhm.
like they are, and you're going to be just like they are. So I
Right.
really believe that that is a really powerful study and to help people overcome that intergenerational trauma.
Absolutely. And sometimes we don't even know where it comes from, but when we start doing the work, the kind of the dots start get connected and we see where it comes from and how it happens. And that's another part of heart healing is that we really do try to understand from the wounded person's part, maybe why that came to be, and we start to reveal layers, right? Like remember finding out that, my dad was very would tell me like what I needed to do. Like, you need to go to college to get a business degree, right? And I wanted to do this. And he said, no, you're going to do this. And then as I learned more, I found out my dad had the same thing happen to him by his father, right? And then I was like, mind blown. Makes sense why my dad was like, this is how you need to do things because he was told how he was supposed to do it. And so we do pass that along. And I even had to stop myself from doing that to my son. I had to let him find his own path.
Well, that's good that you're actually able to understand that, and so you kind of broke the intergenerational with your son. So that's
That
a
is my hope.
well, that
Absolutely.
is a happy story that we're learning here on this particular video. But Laura, the one thing that we as people who have experienced childhood trauma, people pleasing becomes like second nature, right? We're always trying to please people. Tell us a little bit about how we can set boundaries into the people pleasing because my biggest struggle in life almost is setting boundaries and not just slipping back into people pleasing.
Right. Well, a lot of times people think that boundaries are it's just you being rigid or whatever, but boundaries really are an act of self-love. And so there are all types of boundaries. There's physical boundaries, there's emotional boundaries. We actually have boundaries and, whether it's the rules that we are supposed to follow as citizens or whatever, those are all boundaries. And so, and, some of the work that I do is helping people recognize when they are saying yes to avoid rejection and conflict, or they're saying yes to feel validated and loved, and they're shaping their self to fit others, right? To what they want. And boundaries are a way for us to protect our energy, to protect our peace, our mental health. And so learning how to set boundaries is really going inward to figure out what is it that is true to your most authentic self. What is your value, right? Well, I grew up thinking you should help everybody. If you're asked, you should help. But the truth is, I overextended myself. I didn't have time for myself. I was always feeling burned out. I was always worried if I was messing up or hurting someone's feelings. And so I lost me and I didn't know what it is that I really valued. So part of it is really understanding like what are your values and then judging like if I say yes to everything, how is that crossing my values? And so where do I need to put some structures in place so that I feel in alignment with what I value and what's important to me. And it could be as simple as, you know, not immediately saying yes to people, but saying, let me see if I can fit that into my schedule, or let me think about that and I'll get back to you. That's one boundary you can set because not an immediate yes, right? Another boundary may be it's just not I just don't have time in my schedule to do that. I appreciate you asking, but the answer is going to be no. Because sometimes people think no's are being selfish. It's not being selfish, it's taking care of yourself. So it's really about setting boundaries and recognizing people don't always like boundaries, right? We always want to hear yes, but boundaries are not about hurting someone's feelings. It's about being authentic to ourselves, and it's about preserving our own peace. And sometimes it's about being assertive. And assertive means that I value me and I value you, but I'm going to make sure I align with myself. So boundaries, sometimes you have to start small, and it just may be not answering a phone call every single time the person calls, and or responding, I'll get back to you when I can. I had a priest in my past who, on his message, I love this. He always would say, "I'll return your calls as peaceful living allows." And I was like, what? You don't have to return people's calls immediately? And I really like that because sometimes we feel like we have to be on constantly, and we don't. We can take time and we can make thoughtful decisions. We don't always have to say yes.
Well, the one thing with setting boundaries is, there are some people that like you because you're a people pleaser, and they
Oh,
can
yeah.
hear you and they get things done. But once you start saying no to certain things, then all of a sudden they're like, I don't want to be your friend anymore.
Mhm.
So how do you maintain that self-love when you've kind of just been rejected by someone that didn't accept what you typically did all the time by just people pleasing? So I don't really want our audience to think that, oh well, if I have to give up this person, then I'm going to get like almost trauma again from somebody rejecting me. So go a little
Right.
bit into that process and and help people understand that a lot of times the best thing they can do is to get rid of those people as friends.
Well, and honestly, when people don't respect our boundaries, then truly we have to think about what is our dynamic with them. If they're only happy with us when we do for them, then it's not a reciprocal, healthy relationship. And sometimes it may not mean that we have to actually completely break things off. We just may need to create distance between us and them. But some people, because their nature is to always consume and not to return, we might have to let some of those relationships go. And that sounds really, really scary, and really, again, triggers that fear of rejection or abandonment. But also what it does is it keeps us being separate from our true self. When we start to realize that we are good enough and we don't have to please to actually prove we're good, or that we are lovable, we don't have to perform to be loved. And that's where really about we have to go inward and deal with those wounds and start the healing process. It's not people pleasing is, I call it recovery from people pleasing, is not an instantaneous thing. It's a process. We have to learn how to sit sometimes with the discomfort of not getting the immediate response and that immediate dopamine hit when we've done something well and we please someone. Sometimes we have to sit with that a little bit and recognize we're still safe. We still have people who love us. We're still respected and needed. It's just sometimes we have to be able to determine sometimes who are those people who steal our peace and steal our joy and maybe even steal our sense of self because we're too busy focused on what they need and not what we need.
Right. And the one thing when I was reading, you have a chapter in a book called Heart Healing, and I was reading that. And the one thing I didn't even realize is that we can become addicted to self-development books. We can become addicted to overachieving. I mean, I
Hmm.
know that when my grandparents, grew up during the Depression, and it was just work hard, work hard, work hard. And
Right.
I, as I grew older, I mean, I can never really kind of work hard enough. I think, okay, I can always be busy. But,
Right.
you can get to a certain level with the childhood trauma and
Hmm.
then not be able to get to the next level. And then you just work hard at another job. Tell us, Laura, how overachieving and those types of things actually become an addiction to us and we don't even realize it.
Well, so, we think that achievement in and of itself is not a bad thing. But when we overachieve and that becomes our drive of life, it can become an addiction because what we're looking for is the dopamine hit from feeling approval or achievements. But the one thing is that we don't recognize that when we constantly strive for new accolades or new successes, we really start to excessively work, reject our own needs, and it interferes with relationships that leads to anxiety and depression. Why it becomes kind of like an addiction is because it gives us an immediate response, it's kind of like when a drug makes you feel good, and then when you come down, you don't have anything left. So then the overachieving, same thing. It makes me feel really good when I achieve. And then when that achievement's done, what's next? I fall again. So then I got to achieve something else. And so it's kind of like chasing that mood alteration because that's how we're starting to feel good is just by getting more and more accolades or more and more, some people have what we call alphabet soup behind their name. They get all these certifications and credentials. And that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. But what happens is it becomes exhausting and but it becomes this very repetitive nature of I achieve, I don't feel good enough. I achieve, I still don't feel good enough. And so we're in this hamster wheel, so to speak, where we never get off. We never feel enough. And when we don't feel enough, we keep trying to fill it up with other things. And that's like even personal self-development. We keep trying to find the next thing to answer the why. How do I make myself a better person? And so I even recognized that I was constantly seeking new therapies so that I felt like I had enough to help people. And the truth is, I already have an amazing skill set. I had to stop seeking more and more and recognizing I have what I need. It's already within me. It's all the years of training, but also learning how to recognize that we have gifts and we have already what we need inside of us to be the person we want to be. But we have to recognize that the wounds of not feeling good enough or not feeling loved or feeling fear of rejection, we have to heal those wounds so that we stop repeating that pattern.
Well, that was great. Now, also, I want this is for we have a lot of entrepreneurs in our and Lord, we start a job or we start our career thinking that we're going to have freedom to do things with our family and our children. But what
Right.
happens is we build a business and we become so engulfed in it. And as it grows, we don't give we don't delegate, right?
Mhm.
We try to do everything ourselves. So
Right.
you can tell people in our audience if you have a business, how can you let go of some of the control that you feel that you need to do and to make things perfect and to actually get the goal that you're looking for to have a business that gives you freedom that you can have relationships with your family and your friends.
Well, first of all, that concept of control is really about a coping mechanism for anxiety. So if I'm not in control, then I'm really, really anxious. So I used to be the same type of person. I had to do everything. It was very hard for me, even in my job, to delegate because I felt like if I did it, it'd be done right. I'd do a good job. It would be successful. And then, I wouldn't have to worry about anybody messing up, right? And so we can even stop our growth by having to control everything. We have to recognize that that's anxiety talking, and that's our fear sometimes of failure. It's our fear of not being able to achieve our goals. And what we do is we push, 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 and we lose more of ourselves as we do that. So when we start to recognize that control, a lot of times is really a mechanism for anxiety, we need to focus on understanding where the anxiety comes from and really what is driven. And it's usually this core negative beliefs we have about ourselves that we have to do it perfectly, we have to please others, we have to show we're good enough. And so in order to do that, we got to control everything. And so learning strategies of how to navigate anxiety, releasing control, because there's only three things we actually have control over, and that is our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. So once I understand my negative beliefs and how it triggers my fear and my need to control, then I can start to let go of control and find ways that I can delegate to other people who are able to help me with my mission or my goals. But if I let go of control, then I allow them to help me achieve what I want because they bring more to the table sometimes than only one person brings.
Well, and if you try to control everything yourself, your business will never get to the level that you want it to.
Absolutely.
It'll get to a level where if you lose control, then you're not willing to do that, and so you'll get to this level, but you'll never get to that level.
Right. And we really have to recognize the patterns and then figure out how we want to work on healing those patterns because these are all strategies to keep us from feeling those uncomfortable negative emotions or uncomfortable emotions and uncomfortable beliefs that we have about ourselves. And so recognizing that control really keeps us from truly allowing ourselves to be our most authentic selves.
Well, the one thing I want to interject here is that you can't you can't cure the trauma. You can't reach a level unless you look for help. So looking for coaches, looking for therapists, and actually taking that step and loving yourself enough to make that investment really is the key to becoming a happy and successful person in life. I really believe.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this, Laura. We're going to wrap up, but if you have to tell one thing to people that are listening about the people pleasing and overachieving, what is the first step that they should take in order to start uh, becoming in control of those emotions?
Well, I think first of all, we have to gain a sense of awareness, understanding our patterns, and then start focusing on self-compassion, really looking at ourselves, especially the fact that we do have inner parts of us that are really wounded, and having compassion by recognizing it, not guilting ourselves, not blaming ourselves, but then taking responsibility for finding the strategies, whether, like you said, it's coaching or heart healing or some form of therapy, to really choose themselves and do the deep dive, do the work that's holding them back from achieving the life that they want.
Well, this heart healing sounds really not really like a good thing to get involved with. If people are connecting with you, Laura, tell us we'll put it on the screen, but tell us how people can get in touch with you and get some therapy if they need it.
Well, I have a form on my website at www.truesdalecounselingservices.com. And it's an inquiry form where if you're interested in heart healing, you can fill out that form and then I would schedule a time to talk to you. In heart healing, we have individual, just one wound kind of sessions where we address a primary issue, or we have a whole series of wounds that we can work on in a package format that allows us to go through all the five main receiving wounds that keep us from achieving the life that we want.
Well, that's great, Laura. Thank you so much. I'm fortunate enough to get to talk with you every week because you're a part of my mastermind group. But thank you so much for being a part of the Transform Childhood Trauma Summit, and we're hoping that people will reach out to you and have help healing some of their patterns that they need to break. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you, Jamie.
My pleasure.